program and handing over to Dr. Manouri for her session. Over to you, Dr. Manouri.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nadisha, and the Venerable Sirs, Venerable Jnanasiha, and Venerable Olande Anand Mahatero. I am much honored that you have joined, and dear Dhamma friends. And I have to thank Nadisha, Tamarasi also, who is recording this session. Today's topic is basically on Tanha, and the topic is Tanha, Craving, Clinging, and the Five Aggregates. So this is, as you know, a very important concept and which we have all heard of, but let's try to take a closer look at it. And I would like to begin. I will start sharing the slides. Just give me a moment for that. I think you can see the slides, I hope. Tamarasi, is that all right?
Yes, we can see the slides. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So let us begin by looking at the meaning of this word. As we all know, I think that it comes from the word Trishna, which is in a Sanskrit word, which means thirst. It's not just the thirst that we need to quench our, just taking a drink to quench the thirst, but it's an insatiable thirst. And the translations to Sinhala is also Trishna or Tanha, and in Pali, it's Tanha. Now, the English translations are craving, but of course, it's not just mere craving. I think it's more continuous craving or also an endless desire. Sometimes you may desire something in life. For example, you're cooking something with a recipe and there's one ingredient missing. Well, you desire to get that. But this tanha is something much more than that sort of need-based desire, but an endless desire. And another very valuable translation, I think, is clinging, also to mean, the tanha to mean clinging. So with that, let us look at a little more at this topic. And as you know, the servants of the Buddha have always been looking at the Buddha word, not really more interpretations. So that my purpose here today also is to bring out what the suttas have to say, the Pali suttas. And as you know, the Pali suttas are all Buddhist sects accept that it is the closest because it's the oldest recorded recordings of the Dhamma, so that it's probably the nearest to what the Buddha taught. So let us, that is what I hope to do, to look at some of the Pali suttas and see what we can learn about Tanha. Now, I would start with a very well-known verse from the Dhammapada, which are very sort of well-known, popular, and also short and sweet and easy to understand. So I like to bring you this verse that Tanhaya Jayati Soko, Tanhaya Jayati Bayam, Tanhaya Vippamuttasa Natti Soko Kuto Bayam, which means that tanha or craving causes sorrow, and also tanha causes fear. So soko and bhayam are caused by tanha. And vippamuttasa means when you have freed yourself from tanha. There is natti soko, no sorrow, and then whence the fear. So this is, I think, a well-known sutta. But I found that very close to these suttas in the Dhammapada, arranged in sort of chronological order, are 4 other verses where this keyword tanha has been supplanted by or replaced by just one other word. In each of these 4 verses, a different word has been used instead of tanha. But the rest of the verse is much the same. One of those is pemato. So pemato means affection, and it's pemato jayati soko, and pemato jayati bayam, and so forth. Now, affection, of course, Buddhists are not expected to not be affectionate. There is loving kindness and affection. But let us look at this more closely. But the other 4 words also let us look into. There is kamato jayati soko, meaning lust causes likewise sorrow and fear. And ratya, attachment. Piyato is enjoyment. So we have ratya jayati soko, and likewise piyato jayati soko. Now these are all in the Piyavagga, meaning in the chapter on enjoyment. So that's the common thread in all these 4. And if we look a little more carefully at the background story to each of these, when Buddha recited these or explained these, there are different situations. So that is why the word tanha has been replaced, but you get the same sort of grouping of enjoyment in all of them. And for example, Pemato Jayati Soko was told to Visakha, the great Upasika, who was foremost among the lay disciples, the female disciple, at a time when she came to the Buddha very severely grief-stricken after the death of a grandchild. And this was after the funeral as well. So she had time, but she was still very, very needing a lot of support. And so that was why the word affection there. Whereas kamato was when a prince arrived with a set of problems. Piyato, again, to a group of youngsters who arrived having got themselves into trouble, enjoying themselves in a park, I believe, and there were problems that they had faced, which caused them now fear, bayam, as well as soko, because there was loss involved. Somebody had stolen from them. Ratya jayati soko was to the Lichavis, about attachment, and probably in a more sort of, I don't know whether it was more in a political sense, but they were all about bonding and enjoyment. So that gives us some idea of the meaning of this word in a broader sense of not just only craving for a rich man wanting to get richer or something like that. So let us begin with, we sort of go deeper into these suttas. I would like to, let's begin at the beginning in that first sermon in which the Buddha preached in that deer park in Saranath, near Varanasi, when he started by turning the wheels, the Dhamma Chakra Pavattana Sutta, and the very core of the Dhamma was taught to the 4 ascetics who were listening, his 4 friends, the Buddhas, and it was considered to be, people think it was on suffering, but really out of those 4, 3 are about how to get rid of suffering. So it's not just suffering, but how to get rid of it. And as we all know, the second noble truth is very upfront in saying the cause of suffering is tanha. In the Buddha's own words, it was samudaya, how it forms, how the suffering forms. Samudaya, dukkhaṃ arya sacchaṃ, is the noble truth, the arya satya, the arya sacchaṃ is the first words are yāyam tanha. So that's the first mention. Yāyam tanha pono bhaviko, meaning rebirth. punarbhava, pono bhaviko, and nandiraga sahagata. The more you are delving in this enjoyment, at that time it might be tatra tatra vinandani. When you are in it, it is enjoyable, but it is a cause of suffering. So that's the second noble truth, when the Buddha also says that these should be got rid of with that Pali word pahatabbanti, get rid of it. Now the third noble truth is about eliminating tanha. The way to end suffering is eliminating tanha. And that's what is told. Again, that was, once again, that Arya Satya is yetasya eva tanha, this tanha that you have, asesa viraga nirodho, meaning get rid of it without any residue. Asesa means no shesha, nothing left behind. Complete elimination, annihilation of tanha. And what is more, it should be for all, eliminate for all time if one needs to end the cycle of births and deaths. So that is the very first sermon itself, is very heavy on tanha. Two truths are entirely on tanha, and so forth. So with that, before we go any further into the other suttas, I mean, there must be lots of suttas in the Buddha's dispensation. I believe there are, it is said 84,000, but the Tripitakas have some, I'm not sure, I think it is some 17,000 suttas, but many of them must be dealing with Tanha, but I have picked out some which were actually titled Tanha Suttas, and there are several of them too, because that was coming to the crux of the matter. But before that, let us take a closer look at Tanha and what we already know. How does Tanha arise? The root of Tanha is avidya or ignorance. That is very, very clearly said. Because avidya or ignorance is ignorance of, you get attached or you crave for something which you don't realize at that point in time that it's impermanent. You see it as something permanent and something beautiful and something very, very satisfactory and happy. But in fact, the truth is, the universal truth is that it is, things are impermanent, and it's ignorance that causes us to see what is impermanent as permanent, what is unsatisfactory as satisfactory, and what is non-self or what we have no control on as having control and being, under one's self-control. So that's the ignorance that is always there. If there is craving, there is no tanha or craving in the absence of ignorance or avidya. And likewise, I think where there is avidya, there is tanha. So, because if there is no avidya, there can't be tanha. So, and as a result of tanha, rebirth is one consequence, as well as, of course, karma. Good or bad karma, for that matter. Maybe if there's a craving for doing good things, you can amass good karma. But even through that, you're only lengthening your cycle of births and deaths. So basically, avidya is the cause of tanha. Then, as an immediate cause of tanha, vedana or feelings, because these, it is the sensory, the six sense organs, the six sense bases that bring us these messages inside. We've seen something nice and we've had a craving, or we've heard some music. We want to keep hearing it again and again. Have plenty of such examples in our own lives. Maybe something we've seen or heard, we might, even if we have seen and enjoyed it, we might be going again and again. It might be even a play. Every time Manouri is shown, we feel like to go again and see it, Manouri or Singapore or whatever. So that's now becoming a endless craving of a sort. So it is correct to think that the six senses bring immediate causes. It could be food. It could be people go to great lengths to satisfy the craving for food. You don't need to elaborate on this. So likewise, whether it is tactile sensations or for that matter, mental emotions, and the sixth sense is the mind. However, Vedana need not always, I think it's important to realize that Vedana is no doubt an immediate cause for Tanha to be created, for craving. But one does not necessarily have to crave just because you get a sensation or feeling through the six senses. Because surely an Arahat has Vedana but doesn't have Tanha. And likewise, if one can be mindful and obviously not that ignorant and being able to analyze things and look at things truthfully, you can enjoy. There's nothing to say that I don't think there's anything to say that a Buddhist can't enjoy an ice cream or a piece of music or something, but not to get crave for it and so forth. I'm talking of those in lay life. So if there is mindfulness and also equanimity, one can attempt or certainly achieve not having craving just because there were sensations. Now with that, let us look at the Pali Suttas that I thought I would bring to your attention. Here is by the title of Tanha Sutta. There are many by the name of Tanha Sutta. At least I'm going to focus on 3 at some length. This is in the Anguttara Nikaya, book 4. Now, even in the Dhammacakka, which we discussed already, it is said that there are 3 types of tanha. In this sutta begins by saying that tanha creeps, clings, and chokes the world. And all 3 types are there. And we know that it's called kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. Kama tanha meaning craving for sensual pleasures. This could be sensual pleasures, which could even be a craving or very hard-held views, I think, could come in there, which you find it difficult and you crave for those, your viewpoints or your... then you get bhava tanha, which is often called due to existence, a craving for existence. This is the one that creates the next bhava or the rebirth forming as well. But it's also a becoming it's not just only at the point of death, but becoming things in life, achieving things to become things, and which is a sort of a bhava tanha, without which that's the one that drives you through. And vibhava tanha is often meant to annihilate and to destroy what is, but it is also a change, isn't it? Now, I think it's a desire or craving to change things. One has to change things, but when one gets into a real craving mode, very, I see people wanting to make changes today in our society, and they can get quite worked up on this. And people I know who are very sedate and into the Dhamma, suddenly I find them shaking, saying how necessary it is to change something. So that I just think to myself, this is also a manifestation of vibhava tanha of a sort, not to be able to take it on some even keel. Anyway, these are the 3 types of tanha. But in this sutta, which I'm not going to go into because it is too scholarly for the likes of me. I'm no scholar, I'm only a student of Buddhism. This analyzes it and divides and takes us into how tanha can be of 108 types. So I think I'm not going to do this for long, but just that the 3 types of tanha, when it comes each of the 6 bases, you could call it, say, the one that was created by the eye and by the ear or by the nose, whatever that sensation, smell, vision, or hearing, taste, and so forth. It can go into 3 into 6 becomes 18. And then again, as interior and exterior in their origin, this is quite complicated the way it is explained. It wasn't easy for me to get my head around that, but basically it was interior, meaning I am such and such, and the craving for I and such, and the exterior is mine, where it came, the craving came from out, but now I'm making it mine. And the next, then it becomes, the 18 into 2 becomes 36. And then the past, present, and future, because we have past cravings, which we can think about and still crave for them, some enjoyable thing or whatever. And then the present, and in the future, one can crave for things. So it becomes 108 in that fashion. Let us leave that and get on to some more practical and our everyday situations. And this is, in this slide, I've just brought in from several sources the effects of craving. And there is another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya that from the book of 10, the earlier one was from the book of 4, where the Buddha says that tanha sort of entangles you and envelops you, it ensnares, entraps, enslaves a person. And it's a non-stop desire for a supposed bliss that the world is all enveloped in. So it goes on. And yet in yet another sutta, which we are going to do in a little while, we find the words tanhaya niyati loko, which means the whole world is dragged here and there by the powerful pull of craving. The powerful pull of craving, and we can see what a troubled world we are in. And undoubtedly tanha of one form or another, it could be vibhava tanha of changing, or kama tanha, which is for sensual pleasures. At the end of the day, I think most things that happen, many things are into one. We can see them very obviously. We read in some country there was elections. Obviously, there was kama tanha, wanting certain pleasures and becomings of becoming various people, important people. So that, and also the change. So it's vibhava tanha. I feel that alone is enough to show what the three tanhas are like. But here, the best description of the three, of the other two, the second and third, that I've ever heard was from Ajahn Amaro of Amaravati, chief incumbent. Ajahn Amaro says quite rightly that it's like in a motorcade where right in front, it's kama tanha that we see. We mostly see kama tanha, people's need for money or need for pleasure, comfort. So that's the motorcycle that's right in front, and that's the one. But little do we realize that next, on either side of this limousine that is coming with an important person, there are two other motorcyclists who probably are as powerful or as well trained or even more than the one in front. And those are these becoming tanha and the changing tanha. So I thought that was very good, because what is very obvious to us, to anybody, is the kama tanha. But the other two are as important and not to be forgotten. Now, here are some similes, some very illustrative similes that the Buddha has, Buddha's teachings have mentioned. We hear of a dog running from one butcher to another, from one butcher's shop to another, hoping to get a bone or a piece of chunk of meat, but all he gets is a bone that has been fairly well cleaned, and all he gets is a lick at the blood only. So not much meat. So this is what the Puthagjanas, you and I, are said to, our lives are a bit like this, running from one thing to another, hoping to get full satisfaction, and then getting on from one to another. But even if there has been success and satisfaction, if you look at it on the broad scheme of things, and rebirth, one has no guarantee where one will go, and one is very much alone in samsara, leaving all this, whatever you have, and you go. So then another one is about flapping of a fish caught in a net. The speed with which the fish is flapping It's like what we are running from one to another, or the agitation that is there in this process. Then come across the word Tanha Lata, meaning Tanha is like a creeper, Lata. And it has grown, and there are fruit-eating monkeys swinging from branch to branch, eating the fruit. It's like a person swinging from one existence to another, enjoying the fruits, but swinging from one existence to another. And another was a fearful rabbit, an ensnared rabbit. He's very scared. And such is the fear that being engrossed in tanha can create. Then we have all heard of the beggar who scratches his wound to keep it going. And an itch and a scratch, We have in dermatology, you have itches that rash, and we have rashes that itch. But whatever it is, the more the calmer, the itch is greater, and the scratch is also greater, and you go on itching and scratching, and the itch continues. Go on scratching, and you don't realize that it's only keeping it going. It's very difficult to break that without a proper explanation by the dermatologist who is treating, a proper conviction of that to stop scratching. It's not easy thing to do. And we have in the Margandhya Sutta about a leper burning his wounds. So much the same sort of thing. And I came across the word Tanha Sineho in the Dhammapada, meaning, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it properly, moisture. Tanha is like a moisture that supports growth of seeds into a field of karma. The seeds of consciousness will grow in the field of karma. So Tanha is able to propagate and able to promote growth. So with that, let's go to the next one. So that's what Tanha is and the dangers of Tanha and what Tanha is like, running from a butcher shop to another. But getting rid of Tanha, also there are a lot of Dhammapadas and a lot of suttas. And one very famous Dhammapada, which we all know, where we say that the gift of Dhamma is the, all gift of Dhamma excels all other gifts. Dhamma Dhanang, Sabba Dhanang, Jinati. The last line in those 4 lines is Tanhakkayo Sabba Dukkam Jinati. Sabba means all dukkha can be won over. Jina is victory, victor. Tanhakkayo is getting rid of tanha. It's not kaya here, but tanhakkayo, meaning kshaya. Kshaya kirima is like getting rid of something. At least it sounds to me. I don't know Pali. And this is not the way to understand Pali, but through Sinhala, but at least it gets you somewhere sometimes maybe wrongly. But tanhakkayo sabba dukkam jinati means getting rid of some. Tanha is the one way of getting rid of all dukkha. In the Kama Sutta, in the Sutta Nipata, there is a Kama Sutta, which is in verse form. And I think certainly the second part of it I have read before as being translated by the former governor. We had Robert Chalmers, who wasn't liked in the history of Ceylon, but he was a Pali scholar and he went back and translated the entire Samyutta Nikaya. But it says that if for that person longing, desiring the pleasures diminish, he is shattered as if shot with an arrow. So as long as the longing and desire were there, and is enjoying the pleasures, that's fine. But the moment that diminishes, it can be a very shattering situation. And whoever avoids sensual desires, as he would with his foot the head of a snake, the speed with which you should try to end it, obviously, is shown here, goes beyond mindful and through attachments in the world, gets rid of attachments in the world mindfully. So that's just 2 or 3 quotations or citing suttas. Here are in the Dhammapada. Now, you remember that we started by those from the Piya Vagga, Pemato and Kamato and so forth. But they were from the Piya Vagga, Vagga meaning chapter in the Dhammapada. But Tanha Vagga, there is another totally devoted to Tanha. There are 25 verses there. And one that I would like to, since we are now thinking of eliminating, we did the dangers of Tanha. We are now considering the elimination of Tanha. And we've seen about the foot on the head of a snake, as with the sort of speed with which you have to do it, the elimination. Here is another Dhammapada. The Pali line is Evampi Tanha Anusaya. Anusaya is latent. It is hidden underneath. So the Tanha that is hidden underneath, if you haven't got rid of, Nibbati dukkha middam punam. It will come again and again, the dukkha. If you haven't got rid of it, you uprooted it fully. So the Dhammapada reads, just like a tree cut at the top will shoot up, if its roots remain unharmed, suffering will crop up again. If latent disposition for craving is not uprooted. So as we said before, it has to be a total elimination and annihilation if it is not to grow again, and if it is to end the cycle. This is with a Nibbana-oriented goal. Then there are some other verses among those 25, which I just like to show. In one, the Buddha, more than one actually, he has met monks, I believe, who had freed themselves of the household life and found pleasure in the forest, but had returned back to the bondage, back again. And the Buddha says, binding with iron or wood is not as strong as the bonds of sensual pleasures, for jewels, ornaments, children, and wife. So that's the strength of those bonds that brings one back. So this is just reality. And those infatuated with lust fall back into the stream of samsara, like a spider running to and fro in the web spun by itself. So that's some of the thoughts I wish to share about craving and its elimination, how hard it is, how strong the pull is, back to bondage, back to craving. Let us proceed. I like to really for you to reflect on this. In this slide, I have just placed what I'm not trying to talk about the rich person wanting to get richer, or the powerful pull for a person to return to bondage, but another common experience, I think, when the mind is reasonably settled. I confess I have this, where when I'm fully rested and really nothing to do, there is an inability to do nothing. Now, I'm not saying this is Tanha, but I'm just wondering what it is. I was wondering what it was. And the thought crossed my mind because I have heard the most respected Venerable Udairiyagama Dhammajiva Thero, meditation master, whom I have followed quite a bit, often telling during question time, he tells people, this is what I say, I asked you to sit and do nothing, and you can do nothing. And he says, me nikang inna beri kama, in Sinhala he says, nikang inna beri kama me tiyenni. And I think there is something there, because sometimes when you're just really finished, you're really rested, you can rest. You think, I'm not talking of being bored. There are people who are bored who will get up and play the piano or read a book or go for a walk or call somebody. I'm not talking of boredom. I'm not talking of loneliness. I'm just talking of why somewhere when the mind is getting quite settled, there is a need to have something more, and you don't even know what it is. So you get up and either make a coffee or maybe look at the phone and look at some pictures of a grandchild, which have do something which is really not that you wanted to do that at that time, but you just there was a wanting to want. I don't know whether this is a common, I believe, based on those meditation masters' remarks. And I found sometimes there is really, what is this? So is this a habit of having had a busy life and then you can't rest? Or it's not really that? I didn't think so. And the problem is, so is it a habit, and has it habit even become a addiction of wanting all the time to be saying something or doing something or whatever, and maybe you're doing nothing, and then you think, I'll try to find a speaker for 2 months ahead when this whole program is ready. So really there was no necessity. So what is one craving? I thought, is this craving? If so, craving is a verb. Addiction is a verb. But you have to have an item, you have, and if you say somebody is addicted, you have to say he's addicted to alcohol or cigarettes or hard drugs or what have you. There's to be, or even a behavior. You can be addicted to a behavior. So is this a behavior that one is addicted to? If so, what was my question? So I don't know. I'm just reflecting, because I think the practice of Dhamma also requires reflection. And then it's, the need to have something turning to an immediate relief of making a coffee or doing one of those things was, I felt, not dealing with the root cause. There's something else. It's like masking an acute symptom without treating the underlying problem. There's something there, but what it was, I couldn't. Then I saw this line, which I don't know, which is much broader than just this sort of thing. In the Rattapala Sutta, Uno loco attita, I think it is, Tanha Daso, where uno is a deficiency. There is a deficiency in the world meaning even our body. As you know, the Buddha has said that this whole world is like, the body is like one's own world, anything within here. The four long body, that the most of 6 feet, 4 long, 2. Anyway, uno loco atita tanha daso. There is a deficiency in the world which is insatiable, and we are enslaved to. What is that? That is, of course, tanha. That is what is said, that there is tanha, that the whole world is enslaved by tanha. We have heard this before. But to me, I couldn't understand what this wanting to want was, when there wasn't really a wanted object, but just a wanting. And then, as you know, the foundation, one of the most important things in this understanding the Dhamma is having a Kalyana Mitra, meaning a spiritual friend, meaning a good friend, a friend who will show the path, not false friends and not friends otherwise. So that the Kalyana Mitras, the Buddha has said, we remember when Venerable Ananda said, isn't half this thing, doesn't half the 50% of this Dhamma rest on Kalyana Mitras? The Buddha said, no, Ananda, not 50%, 100% of it rests on Kalyana Mitras. I am very fortunate in having such a Kalyana Mitra, not in the servants of the Buddha though, who introduced me to a sutta. These are not called a Tanha Sutta. Obviously, there are lots of sutta on this, which seem to fit into my dilemma, which is called Bara Sutta, the burden. And the burden says, acceptance of the burden is suffering. Rejecting the burden is bliss. There's a burden. And here we have the questions. This is, by the way, from a wheel publication of the Buddhist Publication Society, BPS Kandy. And Mahasi Sayadaw, the great Mahasi Sayadaw, the Burmese monk who led the 6th Buddhist Council, the last one to have been held in Burma and in Myanmar, in Yangon, what is now Yangon. This is from one of the discourses that he had. It's a selected discourse from him. Oh, and here what he says, what is the heavy burden? Khandhas are the heavy burden. What is the heavy burden? Khandhas. And what are khandhas? That's the panchaskandha, the 5 khandhas, which, you know, it's basically the body and mind, but the mind is divided to 4. So it's form, feelings, perceptions, volitions or mental formations, and consciousness. Those are the 5. So what is the burden? Khandhas are the heavy burden. Who accepts the burden? Tanha, craving, has accepted this heavy burden. How is the burden thrown down? Annihilation of Tanha is throwing down the burden. Will suffering stop forever? By uprooting craving from its very foundations, the old burden of suffering is laid aside. No new burden can be imposed. And what is more, that sutta says, so we are all, each one of us is a panchaskandha. And that is something, it's not craving, but clinging, isn't it? Bhikkhu Bodhi often uses the word clinging rather than craving, I noticed, when talking about tanha. And I think that's the much better word. Clinging, we are not craving for this. But it's clinging. And this Mahasi Sayadaw Mahatero goes on to talk about clinging to the 5 aggregates in the Bara Sutta. Now, these are the 5 aggregates, as we mentioned now. The first one is form or body, which is called Rupa Khandha, the Rupa Skandha, which is a burden, isn't it? It's a weight. It requires so much of care, the body, and concern and responsibility from the womb onwards. First, it was by the mother who took all this weight and burden, and then we take it over ourselves. It hasn't been a burden, and it continues to be a burden. So obviously there is a lot of clinging, it's been a heavy burden, this body. Why? Because we are feeding it, we are cleaning it, we are clothing it, we may be beautifying it, healing it, protecting it, sheltering it, spending on it. It's a burden. Going for treatment, going for surgeries, going for investigations, and it's very costly affairs nowadays. Then we get Vedana Khandha, which is Vedana, feelings. Aren't we all seeking? It's for the body and mind. These 5 aggregates are the five aggregates are the panchaskandha. Vedana, seeking pain-free comfort for the body. If it's cold, we want it to be warmer. Or if it's hot, we want it to the air condition to the temperature we want. So there's a big burden here. Seeking pain-free comfort for the body or happiness for the mind is a full-time burden, I think, throughout life. Right? And it might be the Vedana that you get feelings about other people's problems also, and then there's further Vedana. So it's not just your panchaskandha, but let's face even with your own. Sanya are the perceptions. So Sanya Khandha is all that we have learned. Sanyas are the perceptions. At the end of the day, everything we learned, every word we speak, we have learned. And that's a lot of sanya we have collected. Words, sentences, language, whatever other subject we learned. So we are storing it, any skills, right? Reusing it correctly or incorrectly. That's Sanya Khandha. Again, another burden. Sankara Khandha is, the Sankara is where we are building on this and thinking, kept busy, weaving. We are weaving stories out of this. In fact, Nirvana, Vana means weaving, I believe. Nirvana is no longer weaving. No longer. So this is one place. We can't stop the Vedana and the Rupa having to look after the body. Obviously, some degree of body looking after is necessary, and it's important because this is the body through which you'll try to attain Nibbana, having got the chance to, but at least attempt to. But Vedana, we get feelings, but then we should be able to control them without. But Sanya, all perceptions, again, we can see that they are not lasting if we watch them. But Sankara is more difficult to stop. And the most difficult of all are the consciousness, which is Vijnana Khandha, which is finally you have consciousness of this, what is. And that creates, it's more difficult to understand, but it's impermanence and it's burden, but it's certainly creating a flourishing field of karma. So in that sutta, it goes on to say that this process has gone on, this clinging to the five aggregates, not for a year, not for one day or a year, or for one lifetime, but from the beginning of samsara, which is, we can't see where the samsara started. We are told that it is impossible to see where it started. So basically since time immemorial, for eons, kalpas, this has been going on. So no doubt, that is the problem, the clinging. We have I'm not saying that we bring from one place to another, because nothing sort of goes from one life to another. But the moment you get a body, right, whatever, animal or human, or maybe even celestial, that's a burden. And it's formed of these five elements, these five dhatu, or whatever you call it. So that's it. Now, of course, all this is still theory. Most important to come to stop it. But before we get there, I like to just show another sutta, Tanha Sut, which is from the Samyutta Nikaya. This is a translation by Bhikkhu Sujato from Sutta Central, this Tanha Sutta. Question is, what leads the world on? What drags it around? The answer is Tanhaya Niyati Loko. Craving leads the world on, craving drags it around. Another question, what is the one thing that has everything under its sway? The answer in Pali is Tanhaya Ekadammassa. The one thing, what is the one thing? Eka is one. Tanhaya Ekadammassa, the one thing that has everything is Tanha. That has everything under its way. Craving is the one thing. Craving has everything under its way. Tanhaya Ekadammassa, Tanhaya Parikassati is translated into English like that by Bhikkhu Sujato in Australia. Now with that, I found a Tanha Sutta which shows us the way out of this, at least attempt the way out of it, or to understand the way. All this was the dangers of Tanha and how difficult it is to eliminate it, and how the whole world is caught in it, and we are dragged here and there, and we are clinging to the Panchaskandha, which is a big burden, which is also one big clinging, I think, which has to be, because that is self-identity, isn't it? Self-identity is what we are clinging to. So another word for Panchaskandha is Sakkaya. Sakkaya, it is a view of this Panchaskandha, which we see as mine. So we have to look after it, and the I, me, mine thing is that burden. That is what he meant. What is this burden? So you throw that down, you have got rid of the thing. Anyway, now let us go to the next final slide, which is the only one that I really wanted as a slide, because that's heavy. And please, I would want your full attention on this, because it is got 10 points. Therefore, it's from the Book of Tens, the Anguttara Nikaya, which are the numerical discourses, Anguttara. And the Book of Ten, the Tanha Sutta, this is a different Tanha Sutta to the one that was in the Book of Fours, and which was in the Samyutta Nikaya, and which was in wherever else we saw them in. So here, what feeds craving is the question. The first question is, the answer is ignorance feeds craving. We discussed this, that if you're ignorant of the fact that things are let me see the time, I can do this. If we don't see the impermanent nature, if we are ignorant of the impermanent nature, ignorant of the anatta, the non-self, the lack of control, well, we can crave for it. That is when we crave. So what feeds craving is your ignorance. What feeds ignorance? What feeds ignorance are the five pollutants of the mind. There are 5 groups or 5 kinds of hindrances, which are called 5 hindrances or pancha nivarana, 5 nivarana, which cover nivarana, pancha nivarana, 5 hindrances, and they are One is kamachanda or sensual pleasures, vyapada or malicious thoughts or anger or aversion. Aversion, even if a milder degree, it's not good. You have to have a mind that is accepting things and nevertheless not with anger and also not with greed. So that's equanimity there. Thirdly, a restless mind and also a mind with repentance. Uddacha, kuddacha is that. Then we come to sloth and torpor and laziness, which is thinamidda in Pali, and then vichikicha or doubt. So these 5 hindrances cause a polluted mind which can't get rid of ignorance. To see clarity, to get the opposite of ignorance or avidya is vidya. To get to vidya, you have to have a mind that is clear and settled. If you have the 5 hindrances, cause restlessness. To have a still mind, like to see the bottom of the pool, water has to be still. So the stillness can't be got with panchanivarana. So that's feeding the ignorance. Now, what feeds the 5 hindrances? What feeds the 5 hindrances is not the misconduct in words, deeds, and thoughts. It's some words, deeds, thoughts that were wrong, which was not what is the opposite of sucharita. That's not the good charita, but the opposite, the misconducts. When you have those only, that you have these malicious or these cravings or the laziness or repentance or doubts. So that's what was feeding the 5 hindrances. If you manage to control your words, deeds, and thoughts, you can reduce the 5 hindrances. And what feeds the misconduct? What caused that? What fed that? This is a sort of a ahara sutta or nutriment sutta. Going back, the lack of restraint of the sense faculties. If you had restraint, you would have not spoken the wrong words and caused malicious anger and so forth, or whatever, either way. So a lack of restraint fed misconduct. But what fed the lack of restraint? The lack of mindfulness and a very clear comprehension. If you are very mindful and clear comprehension, you will have, if you are mindful, you will be restrained. And if you are restrained, you won't have misconduct, and then it won't go on to the 5 hindrances and polluting your mind where you can't see clearly after that. Now, what fed the lack of mindfulness? What caused the lack of mindfulness? Careless attention, because if you are to be mindful, you have to be watching your mind so carefully, what's called wise attention. But instead of which, if you have careless or inappropriate or attention, if you are not attentive, basically, that is called ayoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara is what you have to have, which is at the point of birth, yoniso manasikara. Mind has to be, as this bad thought is coming, you can stop it, then you are mindful, and then you're not, you don't go down that path. And what feeds the lack of attention? Lack of faith. You have no faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, or Sangha. You don't believe in any of these tosh and nonsense it is. So then you don't bother with watching your mind. And because this whole exercise is in the mind, it's a huge psychological thing, Buddhism is. So lack of faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And why is there lack of faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha? Because you have never heard the correct teaching. So what you have heard, even in the form of Dhamma, has been an untrue or wrong teaching. So the necessity for you to have Saddha is you have to have Saddhamma Savana, the correct Dharma Savana. And how can you have heard that correct Dhamma if you had, as I told you, a true friend? A true friend is at the bottommost, not the bottom at this. It is so important. Wrong associations, false friends take you down this path of craving. So that is called Sappurusa Sevana. So here are the 10 factors. And as you are inclined, I am inclined to go upwards now. That is when we can understand this better. Buddha does the same thing in this sutta. Having listed these 10 this way and explained, he goes back up saying this is like rain on a mountain top. When it rains on the top of a mountain, the water fills the crevices and the gullies and then forms little pools. And then it keeps on raining, then there will be little, streamlets. It will go into and form a bigger pond and a bigger lake. And then bigger, rivulets and streamlets, and then the river goes on meandering into a bigger river and goes right into the ocean, the biggest thing. So this is where it goes. You start with having false friends who will give you the wrong teachings, and you lack faith. Then you're not careless, and it's absolutely careless in regard to attention. You are not mindful. You have no restraint. You get into bad conduct, and your mind is full of 5 hindrances. And you obviously are nowhere near the opposite of ignorance, which is knowing things and being enlightened. And then and only then you can get rid of craving. So with that, I will end. That is a bit of a heavy sutta, Tanha Sutta, but I think it's beautiful. I just like to say that these are twin suttas. Avijja is also got these same things. So, and avijja and craving have been intersposed in the two, and they are kept together. So basically, craving and ignorance are so next to each other. Avijja causes craving, craving causes avijja. With that, I thank you very much for your patient listening, and I look forward to learning from you during the discussion time, which I think I will have to lead because by now Nadisha had another commitment.
Dr. Manouri, I'm here, so I'm happy.
Thank you. That's lovely to know you were there. Okay,
Yeah.
now how do I end this? Nadisha, you can take on.
Yes.
I will try to come out of these slides. I'm a novice at this.
I will do that for you. So,
no, stop the. Stop share.
Stop the recording. Stop
right,
the share.
I'm done. Right, fine. Perfect. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Manouri. You are a professor of your field, but I think we can also make you a professor in Dhamma for the depth of knowledge that you shared, a proper dissertation on Tanha. So thank you very much for this very, very valuable session and for undoubtedly the effort and the time you put in the preparation. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu for you in helping all of us clarify many things in our minds. So our Uppalavanna Swaminwahansa Theranio is having her hand raised for some time now. So would you like to raise the question, please, Theranin Wahansa? If you can unmute yourself, you're on mute.
We can unmute.
Hello. Okay. So after a long time, Mandi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
So after a long time, Manouri, I'm so surprised because at once only and so I had a nap and got up and suddenly it came to my mind that it is Saturday. So I just switched on and you are there. So happy. So, and also I actually halfway I joined. I really don't know what talking. Anyway, it was so interested because you have done good to give this knowledge to us. Very good. Thank you very much. And especially, I just noted down some of the things that you were telling. Actually, it is quite true that this ignorance, because of this ignorance, we are there. We are going through the cycle. So, because ignorance gives us so much hopes, and we have a lot of things to do. So that always our ignorance keeps us going on. So this is something that we should know very well. We have to understand this ignorance is always troubling us, but we don't understand that. That is the point. That's why I wanted to point it out. So you pointed out that. Very good. Thank you. And then the 5 hindrances. So normally we know by the name hindrances that it is they are the blocking people, the blocking things, dhammas. So these 5 hindrances, we have to keep our mind always. And these are the things that cover our way to Nibbana. So I learned from one Dhamma Guru, Bhavana Guru, that you have to think of these 5 hindrances before you sit for the meditation. So when you just think of the 5 hindrances, and these 5 hindrances don't trouble me, and you have a very good adhishtan, firmly you think of that, and you can go ahead. Actually, I have tried this, so you also can try this. So I want to share that. And then I think I don't have much time. And misconduct, and also lack of knowledge of these sense faculties. Sense faculties, we have to understand how to work with these faculties. More than mindfulness, more than going through only mindfulness, we can't understand what we have to do to go through that. So that is a very good point that you have pointed out. I think you have pointed out 10 things, no? But I couldn't catch all these. But I think you have done a very good job. And nice to see you all here today. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share these things. And thank you very much, Manouri. And everybody, have a nice day. Have a good evening to everybody.
Thank you very much, Upalawana Theranin Wahansa. Thank you very much for that, for your comments and sharing. So we can see our Venerable Olande Ananda Swamin Wahansa. So Swamin Wahansa, would you like to share some thoughts? You're on mute, Swamin Wahansa.
Yes, I noticed that. Well, I don't know what to add or subtract to this exposition of the Buddha's words. It was quite a comprehensive summing up of the different things that are important to know how we are entangled in the samsara and how to disentangle the entanglement by overcoming ignorance. I still feel like mentioning that the ignorance or avidya is still different from let's say the absence of ignorance is not necessarily wisdom or the accumulation of knowledge. Buddha's teachings is not necessarily the wisdom that we need to get out of samsara, because that wisdom is something that one has to realize probably through the satipatthana and then the kind of meditations that lead to the wisdom. Sorry. And only thing that also came to my mind is that one of the wisest Mahatheras of Sri Lanka, Venerable Balangoda Anandamaitreya, at a very high age, when he was almost 100, he decided to stay in samsara and be a bodhisattva and opt for rebirth rather than getting out of samsara as soon as possible. So that's yet another option. I can't say whether that is different from the Buddha's teachings, or whether it is just as valid as the other teachings. It's a different approach, different. The eventual, I think, aim of all the Buddhists is to get out of samsara and to attain nirvana, but maybe there are different approaches, I suppose.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minwan, for that insightful sharing. Really appreciated. Mr. Kramer, Mr. Neville Kramer had...
Venerable Jnanasingha is here for a comment. Can we ask Venerable Jnanasingha?
Oh, yes. I just now saw. Venerable Jnanasingha, Swaminathan, would you like to share any thoughts or comments?
I think I was very happy to listen to this talk because it's quoting from the Dhamma, from the Tipitaka. Only one thing, I have to read some of this in Ratapala Sutta and Bhara Sutta. Sometimes I don't like to comment, just without studying deeper into some of those suttas. But one thing I saw that your knowledge of the Pali is now growing. I think it's very much better, and I'm very happy about it. But there is one word that you mentioned, kaya. The kaya, K-A-Y-A, kaya is the body, but here is kaya, K-H-A-Y-A, kaya ikshaya, that is extinction, get rid of. So when you say tanha kaya, when you obtain nibbana is tanha kaya, you get rid of tanha, to get rid of. So that kaya is K-H-A-Y-A. So that's what I noted. In your slide, you have it as K-A-Y-A, I thought. So that's something that all of us have to study. Our Pali is something, I always problem with us is the Pali is not our language in the sense, we are Sinhalese. It's the language of the Bhagavati, and we have to study the Pali. And we study the Pali through translation sometimes, and some of the translations, in English, there's one translation. In Pali to Sinhala and Sinhala, there's one translation. And the thing is, finally, it's most important is for us to understand it. The final understanding has no language as such, is an understanding. And so anicca, dukkha, and anatta, as we have seen, it's really words. Anicca is transient, dukkha is suffering and sometimes called unsatisfactoriness, anatta is soullessness, or without a selfless, that type. But the point is, these are, to us, we understand sometimes the language, but we really don't understand the what is behind that. And that's what the Buddha wanted us to do. Anicca, dukkha, and anatta. It's only when it becomes ours, and that has no language at all. When you understand that, realize it, then I think we have get rid of our tanha. So that's the comment that I have. So it's very good. I'm very happy about listening to you, and your knowledge of the Pali is growing, and very happy the way that you conducted this particular talk on Tanha. So thank you very much. And
Thank you
very
Thank you very much, Venerable Sir, for sharing your insights and knowledge as well. Thank you very much. So Mr. Neville Kramer has been waiting quite patiently. Mr. Neville, would you like to ask your question? I can see it in your chat as well.
When you were talking about inability to do nothing, I wondered whether that is linked to the need to be liked, which I certainly have, and I think many people do, and whether that can be regarded as a craving.
Dr. Manouri?
I don't know. I felt it is, I couldn't understand from where it was coming. I wondered, is this Mara? Is this the, we say Mara when some obstacle? Or is it, I know that in a meditative situation, you would just watch that and it will fade away. So that is correct. The solution is there if you want to get rid of it. But just the fact of getting to the bottom of why this, but I felt that going on clinging forever and ever to our self-identity and our these five is the first thing one is expected to let go in the path of liberation, which is to get rid of Sakaya Ditti, which is to get rid of your personality view. And that, though there are 4 major steps in, to sainthood, as it were, it is known that the first step is not 25% of the job. In fact, they say the first step is about 75. I've heard it, not in a Pali Sutta, I don't know. It may be in a Pali Sutta. But I've heard monks, in the Dhamma sermons, I certainly remember hearing that that's about 75% of the job is done at that first step of the Sotapanna. So that is a big step. And I can quite see that because, of course, that step includes a doubt, getting rid of doubts also. But the biggest difficulty would be the Sakaya, which is yet another word for those khandhas, which are called khandhas, or which are these 5, which are the aggregate that creates each one of us. For example, we have a name, but that's a conventional name. The fact of the matter is we tease it all out. Each one is formed of those 5 khandhas. So those 5 khandhas are a heavy burden, according to that Vara Sutta, which one is fairly clear that is so. So having clung to that from day 1 to the end, the moment you get another one, you cling to that, in another birth. So that seems to be also inability to let go, but really you can let go if you at that level of meditation, when you can, because the meditative insight, the vipassana is watch something, it will fade away. It's like if you see a man trying to rob and you look at him, he'll stop what he was trying to do. If you see something in your mind coming and you just watch it saying, ha. But for me, just finding that sutta was such an aha moment, I thought I must share it with you. And that was why I did this presentation. I'm very, very grateful to a friend who I think is here. She never shows a name. I think as iPad, I haven't looked at I can't, for having pointed out that particular sutta, which I had not heard, but it is from Mahasi Sayadaw's and a BPS publication. So I felt it was very authentic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manouri, for responding to Mr. Neville's query. I too have a comment on when you mentioned that when you're doing nothing, the feeling that you get, which you wasn't sure what it was. May I suggest that it could be restlessness coming from, again, something you spoke about in the program, coming from so many births of us being busybodies. We are so busy by doing things, we hardly just stay without doing anything. So the simple habit of wanting to do something can make us restless. And there's a famous saying by Venerable Ajahn Chah that, like you say, the beginning of the path is 75% of the work. And he says it's all about patience and endurance. And I believe that many of us give in to that restlessness and go back to what we do usually, because that is something that is known for us, and it's a comfort place for us as well, rather than exploring the true nature of ourselves. So that's just a reflection. Is there anything else you would like to add, Dr. Manouri, at this point, or anyone else?
Thank you, Nadisha. But it shows, even if you have been busy bodies, that when you're not busy, you're not happy. You're looking for something. You're not happy with this state. So there is that's, there is unsatisfactoriness, isn't it? On a very mild degree, even there's a gnawing unsatisfactoriness underneath, which is not a big problem, but you just get up and make a coffee or something, and really when you could have just not had it, there was no need for a coffee, or not craving for a coffee, how it goes. Or you telephone somebody or open a book or something, but really could have done nothing.
So perhaps you want to just observe it and see what that is all about. Maybe that's the next step.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to ask a question or comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, very much, sir.
Hello, it's Mahendra. Just to say, I really enjoyed the talk, and I'm reminded of what Aristotle said a long time ago. The more I learn, the less I know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. Wise words indeed. So, Dr. Manouri, we are on the hour now.
Yes.
If there's no further comments or questions, then I think we could do the Punyanumodana.
Yes.
How would you like to go about it?
Shall we ask one of our venerables to do it for us, if it's all right? Yeah.
I guess the question is coming my way.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Akasatta Chibummata Devanaga Mahindika Punyang Tang Anumudita Chirang Rakantu Lokasasanang Akasatta Chibummata Devanaga Mahindika Punyang Tang Anumudita Chirang Rakantu Desanang Akasatta Chibummata Devanaga Mahindika Punyang Tang Anumudita Tirang Rakantu Mang Paranti Ettavata Chamhi Sambadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Deva Anumodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhya Ettavata Chamhi Sambadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Bhuta Anumodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhya Ettavata Chamhi Sambadang Punya Sampadang Sabbe Satta Anumodantu Sabba Sampatti Siddhya Idang me Nyatinang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Nyatiyo Idang me Nyatinang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Nyatiyo Idang vo Nyatinang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Nyatiyo.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That brings this program to a close, and we wish everyone a lovely rest of the evening and a very good weekend. May the
Thank
triple
you.
gem bless you all. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Nadisha. And Venerable Sirs, thank you very much. And all the Dhamma friends, thank you. May you be all well and happy. I will end the program then.